We
strategic plan.
have the packet, and then the 2 Killam items are up.
Okay, and Chris's extended deck.
Is that in the packet or no? I didn't see that. Okay, I call the, what day is today? September 15th meeting of the school committee to order. Let me just quickly go through the agenda, and then we'll jump to public comment and everything else that follows. So we'll open with public comment. We've got a number of items on the consent agenda, and then to reports. In the personnel section, we're going to get an update on extended day staff compensation. Then when we move to the old business section, we will discuss and take a vote. Sorry, Carla. We will discuss and take a vote on the warrant article, the proposed warrant article for the Killam feasibility study. And then following that, we will discuss and take a vote on the background blurb or intro that will accompany that in the warrant report. And then in the new business section, Dr. Milichewski and the team are going to share an update on sort of an annual view, the next year view of the district strategic plan. So we'll have a discussion and a vote there as well. And then, as discussed in our last meeting, we've got a district handbook to review tonight, and we will review and vote on that as well. So, number of votes tonight, relatively straightforward agenda, hopefully. So with that, we will go to public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Mrs. Morgan.
Hi, thank you for the time. My name is Maria Morgan. I live at 26 Lee Street, and I'm speaking on behalf of my husband, Ryan, and myself. I want to publicly acknowledge something wonderful that is happening at Wood End. My son Jonas has something called Williams syndrome, which is pretty rare, and it occurs only in 1 in 10,000 births. Having never heard of Williams syndrome when he was born, my husband and I have spent a lot of effort learning about it and spreading awareness and sharing what we've learned with others. One way our Williams syndrome community raises awareness and funds for our association is by having a walk each year at Franklin Park Zoo. One day this summer, while looking at a list of email addresses of team captains for the Williams syndrome walk, I noticed that there was a Reading teacher email address. I was excited to think that there was someone else in Reading who also had a connection to Williams syndrome. When I looked closer, I recognized the name because I had received a letter saying that it would be Jonas's special education teacher this year, but this was in the summer, so we hadn't yet met her. I did not think that she was involved in the walk because of Jonas, because we had never even met her, and we have our own team. I figured she must have had some other connection. What a stroke of luck, I thought. Perhaps she has a family member with Williams syndrome. Well, that's not what it was, but the real reason is a beautiful and touching one. I learned that the sales staff at Wood End took it upon themselves to find information about fundraisers and walks associated with their students. Without us ever even knowing, they formed teams, registered, and they plan on bringing a group to Franklin Park Zoo on a Sunday morning of all things, September 25th at 8 a.m. And they're doing similar for Down syndrome in October. I can't adequately express how extraordinary that seemed to my husband and me. Jonas has teachers at Rise who have participated in our walks as well, which was to their credit. We had really close relationships with them. Jonas was Erin Joyce's teacher for a number of years, and she's come to a number of walks with us. But his current teachers did this before they ever even had him as a student. Now, that is special enough, but they got us again this week. I opened the Wood End newsletter and saw that the school had planned a Pride Day for Williams syndrome on September 23rd, and they've encouraged all Wood End Wildcats to wear blue that day in celebration of Williams syndrome. Again, this was done without our even knowing. They're not celebrating because we asked, but because they themselves want to celebrate. It means so much to us that these efforts are coming directly from the school and not just from us. As parents, we are more than happy to spread awareness and be conduits of information about Williams syndrome, sharing what we've learned. But the actions that I described show that embracing all students and celebrating differences are Wood End school values. Having it come from the school staff lets us know that an appreciation for all students of all abilities is part of Wood End school culture, and that it's not up to the special education parents to make it happen. I cannot adequately express how much that means to us. It's huge. so as I mentioned, they're doing it for Down syndrome as well. And so when a flyer came home about the celebration days this week, there was a flurry of text messages among parents asking if one of us made it happen. And the answer all around was no. It did not come because of the effort of a family, but it came because of the compassion of the school staff. For my husband and for me, and I think I speak for other families as well, it's tremendous. And it gives us a lot of hope that some of us have to make sacrifices where our children have to leave their neighborhood schools to go to program schools, and it needs to be worth it, and it gives us hope that it truly is worth it, and that they're at a school that celebrates and recognizes the gift that they have to have that program within their school. So I really want to thank Nicole Schwartz and Amelia Jackson and Elena Raffa and everybody else at Wood End who's making this happen, and thank you for the time to allow me to share this with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maureen, and thank you to those incredible staff for making that happen. That's fantastic. Any other public comment? Mr. Haley?
Thanks, Sean. Chris Haley, 71 Tennyson Road. I'm not sure I'm supposed to follow up on that, but I guess I can just build upon the same kind of spirit and atmosphere that's been demonstrated here time and time again. I just want to thank Tom Wise, who's on a plane, hopefully without snakes, Carla Nazaro, Erin Gaffin, Dr. Milichevsky, for the dunk tank this weekend. With your help, as well as Cheryl Lestrades, Jessica Thoreau, Jason, not just in pledge, Kevin Tracy, Katie Buckley, and Rochelle Rubino, we were able to raise $1,704 in the dunk tank that split between the Reading Rotary and the owners of Rough and Ready. The highlight of the day for me, though, was Jessica Callahan, the Director of Academic Achievement here at Reading Memorial High School. She threw an absolute rocket at Dr. Milichevsky with her first ball and dunked him like she's been practicing all her life for that moment.
Big moment.
So I'm happy we're able to have such a great event for all the families in Reading, and all the bragging rights for the kids and whatnot in the future. Some of them don't know how lucky they just had it. I'm meeting with Liliana, one of the owners from Rough and Ready, tomorrow, right after her physical therapy, to give her portion of the money that we all raised. And I'll be sure to send over your congratulations to her. I'll also send over a link to the dunk video from my personal account after my team finishes editing it. It's just tons of footage from everybody getting dunked. It's pretty incredible. So once again, thank you all for participating. We raised the money for a good cause, and hopefully next year we can top it. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Mr. Haley. Any other public comment? Okay, so we will move to the consent agenda. I know for a fact we're going to have a little bit of discussion tonight, but why don't we start with a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, before we take a vote, a couple of things on the minutes. Tom sent over, I don't know if he was waiting for his plane full of snakes or not, but he sent over some edits, which I think were good ones. We'll add the YouTube link for both meetings to the minutes. And then in the minutes for the 29th, there was a reference to ARPA being held on September 1st, which was actually, I think, August 31st, so we'll update that one as well. And then Carla gave a preview of our last meeting on September 8th, which I think was captured as September 28th, so we need to update that one as well. Any other comments on the minutes? And then before I, no. And then Dr. Milichevsky, I know you wanted to make a comment about the one of the donations as well.
Perfect. I'm going to speak about the Pegasus Springs Foundation, but also Susan's going to speak quickly about surplus equipment. Susan, do you want to do
Sure.
first?
Included in your packet this evening is a request to surplus textbooks, which includes 1,020 student workbooks, consumable workbooks. And I wanted to explain that these workbooks came to us free of charge with a purchase of software digital licenses and textbooks. The math department had used some of these student workbook companions, and the department head, Allison Williams, found that the workbooks didn't bring a great deal of value to students' learning, and so the workbooks are not used. We've contacted the vendor. The vendor will receive the workbooks back. However, we will not be able to receive a credit for future purchases. But I did want to explain the reason why those 2018 student companion books were listed as surplus.
Thank you. So in terms of the donation from Pegasus Springs Foundation, that's a donation that will support pilot of Challenge Day at Coolidge, and I want to just give a little bit of context to the community on sort of why are we calling it a pilot when this has been done before, and also why one middle school and not the other. So for those who are not very familiar with Challenge Day, there's a little bit of information in the packet. You can also look it up online. A program that's been run at both Coolidge and Parker in the past, in broad strokes focused on supporting social and emotional development of our students. We have a lot of students, staff, and families who are extremely supportive of the program and have had really positive experience with it. We also have members of our community and members of our staff who think that we could do more to provide more support in the program that would enhance the experience for our students. So given that conversation and some of the feedback raised, and also just given how high stakes this is, and we're talking about supporting students' mental health during a pandemic context, we thought it was important that we, as a team, kind of figure out what's the direction forward as a community. So Dr. Stiles led a committee that was made up of all of our secondary licensed mental health clinicians, so a lot of our school counselors, our school psychologists, to kind of think about what's the future of Challenge Day and also what's the future of just some of our SEL work in general. What the team landed on was we felt it was important for us, all of the mental health clinicians, to first have a shared understanding of what Challenge Day is by experiencing it. So we have many of our members and secondary staff who have not gone through Challenge Day. So if we're going to make decisions about the future of Challenge Day, it's important that everyone sort of has that opportunity to live it. So, and then also we felt it was important that when we have students speaking about issues that are really deeply personal and also deeply challenging in a lot of ways, that it's important for us to provide all of the right supports for students in those settings. So we decided that all of our, licensed mental health clinicians will be at Coolidge that day to support our students through the programming. We feel that that will provide an additional layer of support for our students, again, as they navigate some complex and challenging emotions around social and emotional learning. So we felt it was important to start there and to pilot that model, and to see if that was a model that, you know, sort of everyone who is charged with supporting students' social and emotional learning, mental health, can believes that is the right model for us, and is that in the best interest of our students. So we thank the donation from Pegasus Springs Foundation. We're excited about the pilot at Coolidge. Following the pilot at Coolidge, we'll then reassess and figure out, is this something that we also then want to move forward at Parker, either later this spring or, you know, next year, and also what does this look forward in general for the community. So want to just give that context, as I know a lot of people have familiarity with the program, and also some people may have questions on why we kind of pulled back from having it just, you know, in both schools as we have pre-pandemic.
Any questions? Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, so we'll take a vote to approve the consent agenda as amended, I suppose, around the minutes. All in favor? And all opposed? That carries 5-0. Okay, reports. Dr. Stice.
Thank you very much. Following Maria Morgan, just to let everyone know, on September 20th at 7 o'clock, we're going to be having our first virtual CPAC meeting for the year. Sarah Hardy and Allison Wright and I just met with the board today, and we're going to be covering some of the terms that you may hear in education, especially in a general education context. Tiered level of support, SST, all of those different things. So if people are interested, we will be resending out a link, but there is a direct link to the meeting on our district website right on the front page that people can go to. And then going forward, their meetings are going to be the third Tuesday of the month, and they're hoping to have a virtual and in-person option for those meetings. So a bit more to come on that. We also wanted to let you know we are continuing our work and our partnership with all of our community organizations to make sure that we are really collaborating to make sure all of our members of our community have access to all of the activities in school and in the community. To that end, we have another meeting coming up next week to talk about not only how do we support our learners who may learn differently or access sports and activities differently, but we've also expanded it to include our students who speak other languages as well. And to that end, we've also been working with the Director of Equity and Social Justice for the town, and the town is offering on October 18th from 5:30 to 7 at the Reading Public Library, a new resident open house. And if families speak another language other than English, they are willing to get interpreters, and they'd really like to make connections for everybody to be part of our Reading community. Another thing that is happening in the world of student services, Lynn Lyons, who is an expert in anxiety, has been working very closely and has trained all of our social workers, adjustment counselors, school psychologists. And she's coming next Monday, and we're going to work together as a team to really talk about now what is the specific Reading context, and how are we supporting our students, and really addressing their anxiety, fears around school, and just engaging in the community in general. So we're really excited to have that partnership and work. And then we're also working on our program reviews. Everyone's heard a lot about that. We've done over the summer a lot of collaboration and planning. We're in the process of having the program reviewers meet with the team chairs and principals. And then during September, we'll be meeting with the program staff and the program families. In October, we'll be presenting executive summaries to the CPAC and the community, and then we'll be doing several check-ins with the school committee as well during the year. So more to come on that one as well.
Great. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Dr. Hardy.
Hi, everyone. So the first few weeks of school have been terrific. Very exciting to see our students back in the classrooms, our teachers hard at work. And there are a number of initiatives that we started last year that are starting to come to fruition this year for the Department of Learning and Teaching, which are really exciting. Starting at the elementary level, we have 2 new programs that we are rolling out. These are high-quality, research-based programs that we believe offer to our students equitable access to grade level standards and rigorous tasks, and also to our teachers, the tools that they really need to have their outstanding skills shine through. So in one area, we've looked at ARC Core is being added in grades 3, 4, and 5, and that is a literacy program, which you heard a lot about last year. We've already launched 2 workshops with our teachers, and we have our coaches starting to come into buildings in the next week or so. And again, next week, meeting with the principal leadership team and our core training, so very exciting. We also, if you remember, are launching a math program with grades K1 and 2, illustrative math. We began this program last year in grades 3 through 5, and so this is the continuation, so that, grades 3 through 6 last year. This is the continuation. We'll have K through 6 using illustrative math. This is another high-quality, high-rated curricular material. Our teachers also did receive some additional training right before school started, and we were able to actually start some of that training with them in the spring, which was a nice advantage. Moving into the middle school, one of our initiatives this year is adding in a common assessment in the area of math and ELA. We've had our leadership training, and then we held our first initial teacher training with our curriculum leads. So we're trying to leverage our teacher leaders at the middle school, and then we'll be sharing that training down with all teachers, looking at an initial testing window at some point in October. So I look forward to sharing with you the progress of that project. High school has also been very busy. We have launched our instructional leadership team here at the high school. Myself and Principal Tracy are members of that ILT, but it's led by Jess Callanan. Right away, we've dug into the work of getting into classrooms for walkthroughs in order to start calibrating our department heads around what rigorous instruction looks like here at RMHS. And over the coming weeks, we'll start to dig into those observations and calibrate across the departments, and then use that to support teachers in their next steps in their classroom. So again, very exciting work. And I look forward to being able to update you on that as the year goes on. Can I answer any questions about any of those projects?
So not a question. I had the back-to-school night at Joshua Eaton last night for my fourth grader, and it was really exciting to hear what they're going to be doing in math and reading and writing this year, and to just know all that went on behind the scenes to get to that point. So it was an exciting moment.
I'll just pile onto that because I was going to say something similar, also from fourth grade, back to school yesterday, and my daughter's teacher was very thrilled, very pleased with the early returns on ARC Core, which I thought everybody would be interested to hear. And she particularly was raving about the quality of the coaching, and which was something that I know was important to all of us as we sort of evaluated implementing that program. So I wanted to share one example that I found really compelling, and my daughter's been talking about nonstop. There were two texts that they were using. One was a fiction book about a boy who was afraid of everything. And then the other one was a nonfiction text that sort of explained sort of the scientific background of why we're afraid of certain things. And so they were sort of reading them in parallel and, using them to make those connections. And it was a great example of that rigorous instructional practice that we've all been talking about. So it was great.
That's great.
Yep. So.
Sean, can I add one thing too?
Please.
Just I think as Dr. Hardy was sharing a little bit there too, I just want to thank all of our teachers too. That's a lot that Dr. Hardy just spoke about too. So just like to thank all of our elementary educators who are juggling, either year one or year two of a curriculum while we're kind of getting up to speed of the school year, and that we know that that's a huge burden on our staff. But they're doing it well and already
They really
sounds
are.
like diving in, which is exciting. To our middle school team leads for already starting to take the lead to wrap their arms around common assessments, which we think is an important practice, but it's hard to start to, figure out how we're going to use and leverage common assessments to support student learning. And then I think to our department heads, who I think have been very eager to get into classrooms, to talk about instruction, to support one another. I think that's really exciting. But to have that on day, I'm not counting, say day 7 or
You said 10.
10.
Close enough,
Day
yeah.
10.
It's day 10? So on day 10, I think is really exciting, and I think it shows a lot of our teachers' just commitment to providing our students really high-quality instruction. So just like to thank all of our staff, because we know that while we'll do a lot of the planning behind the scenes and things, we know that our teachers, while they're planning with us, they're also executing and living this out, and that's a lot to start a year. So a huge thank you and shout out to our staff.
Great. Ms. Baton.
Yes, this evening I have two operational updates for you. The first is related to our new food service director, Catherine Franzetti, whom you've met recently. Today is day 8 for Catherine's arrival here in Reading, and she has brought such positivity and such an impact already on our food service program. Her staff has been involved in health and safety training and learning a new POS system. She has worked with her staff to remove obstacles that came with this new software program, so that now parents can review their food, their contribution balances, their payment balances. She's hired 5 new staff members and made a connection with a culinary job training program in Salem. She has brought fresh apples and watermelon to our school lunches. She's met with Mary Juliana, who's our school nurse director, our director of school health services. And together, they'll be working with Tom Zaya and others to develop and refine our wellness policy. And then lastly, she'll be bringing a student sampling at the high school in October for a plant-based protein called Meat Crumble. And if the students love it, then she'll bring it and put it on the menu in November. So we're waiting to hear more about her amazing smoothie offering. So as soon as we have word on that, we'll certainly let you know. The other brief operational improvement, really the credit goes to our two colleagues in Reading, Mike Scouten, who's our Reading Traffic Safety Officer, and Ryan Percival, who is one of our town engineers. Together, they worked with several of us to improve the safety flow at morning drop-off for the RISE preschool program. They started meeting with us in the spring, and through a series of improvements that they've made to refine the traffic flow, things are running smoothly, so smoothly in the morning. We've improved pedestrian safety by installing new signage, new flow of traffic in and out of the parking lot. The school bus will be stopping at the end of a sidewalk instead of pulling in and trying to make a back up and turn within a small area. They've relined the streets and the parking areas. And I would just like to share all of our appreciation to both of them for all of their support. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I just had a couple of questions on the lunch. Is there any more discussion about, I know we talked about it earlier in the summer about whether they'd extend the free lunches. What's the status of that?
Thank you for asking that question. I should mention that lunch is free for all families this year. The state
You mentioned POS system, so I thought.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Our point of sale system is used every day by students so that we can track the number of free lunches. But also some students may like to purchase some additional foods and snacks and second and third lunches. So we do use the point of sale system for that.
My other question was, I haven't heard anything, so I'm assuming we're still on track with the stadium.
Stealing my thunder, but I can get you on to get
Oh, all right, sorry.
That's a good segue
good
into
segue.
Dr. Milczewski's presentation.
Since you ask, so we had, today, we had our weekly check-in meeting today with all those involved with the track. Good news, we are still on schedule for the opening of the track, which would be next Friday in the field for, and the first event to be held would be a home football game. So in the meeting, a couple of things. First, they anticipate that Cape and Islands, the company sort of working on the track right now, they're at the phase of painting the track. So if you've been out there, the track will be both red and black. So it's kind of red on some of the corners in some areas and then black throughout. And they should be finishing that again by Sunday. At that point, the paint should dry. We're anticipating being able to use the field by the middle of next week for a couple of our teams, and then be able to get out there on Friday. There are still 3 things that are still sort of in the works. They're going to take time. The first is just the padding on the goalposts is not ready yet, so we're still going to be here to use the old padding, so just that doesn't look like it sparkles like the rest of the stadium. The scoreboard, we have a new scoreboard that hasn't come in yet, so still this old scoreboard will be up and functioning. And then the last piece, which is probably the most noticeable, is that the track, the spraying the lines on the track is a 48-hour process, and we're hopeful that that would be done sometime next week, but we're not optimistic. It's more likely that that will be done sometime later this fall. We'll have to shut down the field access for just 48 hours for the painting. It will still look nice, still functional. The track is still usable even without the lines, but that's just sort of the last piece of the puzzle there too. So I'd just like to, again, thank all of those involved. I'd particularly like to thank Joe Huggins and Kevin Kabuzzi to lead a project in this day and age where you are on budget, we're just a couple of weeks behind, and the facility looks beautiful. I think it's a testament to their leadership and their work and all the community support, because it really all came together, and we hear a lot of just horror stories right now around building stadiums and tracks too. So thanks to Joe, thanks to Kevin, thanks to all those involved, and we're really excited about the opening next week. Shifting gears to, so in terms of HR, so fortunately, we're in a really good position with hiring of teachers at this point. 3 roles where we continue to ask for the community support. 1, we continue to have a few paraprofessional vacancies. We have a few tutor vacancies, and then we also have a continued need for substitute teachers. So if you know anyone in the community who may be interested in stepping into a power role, a tutor role, or may be able to give a day or 2 here or there to substitute teach, that would be really helpful. I've also heard some parents in the community who have some ideas about building up our sub-pool. You know, parents who may be willing to be on a text list or an email list if there's an urgent need because of trainings or things like that. So that's just an idea that's come to us that's new that we'll think about how do we possibly try to implement something like that. So if there's other ideas in the community about how to support that need, please let us know. And then my last update is that we should have our student rep for the school committee identified by sometime within the next 2 weeks, which I think is really exciting to fill out the whole committee here. They would normally give this update. I'll share this on behalf of them, whoever it may be, that there's next week is a student RMHS homecoming. And there was a lot of excitement and buzz around that. Some of the activities include a kickoff party on Sunday evening, followed by Spirit Week with competitions around door decorating, with Bagel World prizes, and then also a football game on Friday night, then a homecoming dance. A special thank you to Jenna Glazier, Michelle Hopkinson, and Katie Buckley for taking the lead on that. And they defer all of their thanks to 15 seniors who throughout the summer planned this event. And they said it was all student-driven. And I think there's a really exciting buzz about that. I think there's exciting buzz about that, especially feeling like we're starting to turn the corner, hopefully in a better spot with just, you know, a more normal school experience too. So thank you to all those involved. That should be a lot of fun.
Thank you. Please, yeah, go ahead.
In the past, they've had 2 student representatives. I don't know if it's something, they always had a junior and a senior, so then they kind of just swap out. I don't know if that's something that the school is looking at. It was a nice.
If it's something that the committee is supportive of, that works for me. I don't know if that's.
It's a great opportunity for the students.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And has it been with a commitment, a 1-year commitment for the junior, or has it been a 2-year commitment for the junior? Okay.
I mean, we can use the word commitment loosely, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
other things pop
To the
up for
best
these
of your
kids,
Just
but.
want to know how to message it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea, because then, you know, it doesn't put the obligation on one student every week, number one, right? And juniors and seniors might have different experiences to share, so, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I'll share that with the high school team.
Okay. Reports from the committee. Erin?
No major report. So as Jen mentioned, CPAC is having their first meeting on Tuesday night. It will be virtual, so we hope lots of people will tune in and hear about CPAC and what's going to be happening this year. The hope is that going forward, the CPAC meetings will be able to be hybrid, so that's something that's getting worked on. But again, they really want to make sure that it's accessible for as many families as possible. PAIR is not meeting this month because it would have fallen on the financial forum night, so the next PAIR meeting will be in October.
Great. Chuck?
Yes, thank you. The Recreation Committee met Monday night. It was actually a pretty packed agenda. We actually met I don't know whether people are aware that Jen got a promotion, and there's now Ariel Carney is the new Recreation Director. So we met her. We also had a discussion on, there was as everybody probably knows, pickleball is a big thing. Actually, I think there's a professional pickleball league that exists. But anyway, it's also very popular in Reading, and we had a lot of discussion about whether we put pickleball lines on tennis courts, and that's still an ongoing discussion. But and just finding places, I guess the best time to play pickleball, or when everyone likes to play, is between 3 and dinner time or something, or early in the morning. So we'll figure that. There's definitely going to be a need or a question for additional space for that. We also had a discussion on now have portable lights that are solar powered at the Birch Meadow field for practices and stuff at night, mainly for the youth sports. Sorry to have my back for the youth team. So we discussed that. And then we had two updates. The ARPA committee appropriated some funds that has to, I don't know what the select board had voted on that last night or not, but for adaptive swimming and for the Birch Meadow master plan. So phase one. And then we also, the final thing we discussed was there's a committee that's going to start working, I think sometime in December, to discuss the Simon's Way land the land we bought over by Simon's Way. I think it was a couple of years ago now at town meeting, and just to kind of start figuring out what to do with that land. And Angela Binda is going to represent the Recreation Committee, and then they'll, I believe, come back to us sometime later in the fall to make an appointment to that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Sarah?
No reports tonight.
Carla?
On Monday night, there will be a permanent building committee meeting, as well as a Killam Building Committee meeting.
Great. I think in our reports last week, Tom mentions some of the ARPA committee's recommendations, but I did want to share that the select board approved, which essentially finalizes and allocates five of those recommendations, all five of those recommendations, I should say, on Tuesday. So Chuck alluded to a couple of these, but $1.5 million for Birch Meadow Phase 1, $46,200 for the food pantry, $91,600 for the YMCA, which will be overseen by the rec department, for adaptive swim, other programming for kids and adults with disabilities, as well as mental health services for everyone in town. $13,500 for the Historical Commission, and then $22,500 for the Conservation Commission. So those are all, done deals, approved by the Select Board and allocated. The ARPA Committee has about 1.9 million or so, give or take, to still address. We've got another meeting coming up in, I want to say October 12th. And in that meeting, the couple of big items that are left are sort of buffering water and sewer rates, essentially, as well as premium pay for essential workers, including teachers, police officers, anybody who is sort of in face-to-face with the public at the height of the pandemic. So, and then a number of other smaller requests as well that will also be on the agenda that evening, and that we expect will be the last meeting of the ARPA committee. And I think that is all I have. So we will, one more thing I wanted to share from the select board, which is relevant tonight as well. Not the greatest news, but our legislative team was there sharing their annual update. And Senator Lewis mentioned that some of the schools that are getting, some of the districts that are getting MSBA funding are not actually being allocated sort of the full eligibility that the formula would suggest. And he gave one example, which is, don't lean on one example too heavily because there are a lot of factors, but Stoneham High School is eligible for a number similar to us, probably in that mid-40s range, 40% of the total project cost, and their actual reimbursement rate is going to be something more like in the 20s. And so, again, don't lean too much on that one number, because there are things, if there are things that popped up on that project that weren't part of the original funding agreement, they don't get funded, so we know there's a lot of nuance there, but in part just because the projects have gotten so much more expensive, and MSBA is working with a fixed pool of dollars, and they're working on projects that they admitted sort of before we were in our current inflationary state. They're struggling a little bit to sort of properly fund those. Senator Lewis did share that the legislature is looking at how to sort of buffer what MSBA has, so that they can address that. And without getting into the political argument, he mentioned the Fair Share Amendment, which is on the ballot in November, but also just sort of the general sort of state of the Commonwealth's finances is such that they are hopeful that they'll be able to find ways to properly fund the MSBA funding pool. So not the end of the world yet, but just wanted to give everybody that heads up that, our legislators are giving us that heads up that there is, some risk to the overall expectation we should have around MSBA reimbursement. So, all right, and with that, we will move to our regular agenda. Scott, I think we're going to need, we're still working out the wrinkles, as everybody knows, in our Zoom meetings, and the newest wrinkle is that the console's not connected here, so I can't really do anything at the moment. And I think we're going to need it to present here in a second. And Tom, do we have a different presentation for Chris?
The one we emailed to Scott around that, just it's Chris and Mackenzie's presentation.
Okay. So this is what I have on the console. Should we take a recess? Should we just take a 5-minute recess? Just to,
Right, too.
yeah. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess so that people at home don't have to watch us do this, and we will return shortly.
one roommate, and then there's a bathroom, and then there's two
That was a very long 5 minutes. So we are kicking it all the way back to 3 weeks ago when we used projectors for sharing our content. So hopefully we'll get this sorted out before the next time. So I think our next order of business is extended day staff compensation update. I'll bring you guys the remote.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
So thank you for having me. And this is, if you haven't met, this is Mackenzie Irwin. He's our new Assistant Director of Community Education, and he kind of handles extended day with me as well. So I'm Chris Nelson. I'm the Director of Extended Day, and I think the last time I spoke in front of school committee was about 1.5 years ago. So I thought I'd come in and give an update on Extended Day and what we've been through and some things that we've seen. So through our history, Extended Day was established in 2010, and the beginnings first year were about 150 estimated students in all 5 elementary schools. Now, those are estimated numbers. We couldn't find the exact, but Joshua Eaton was our biggest, and they had about 30 students that year. To this current year, we have 466 students enrolled in Extended Day. We also have 101 students on a wait list. The wait list this year is established because there's a shortage of staff. We are about 14 staff short of what we would need to accommodate the 101 students on the wait list. So we're working hard to do that, as well as the 466 students. Our biggest year was 2019, and we had 535 students. I started in 2019 in November, and there was an enormous wait list there, and I'm happy to say by December of that year, we offered everyone on that wait list a spot. So my goal is to do that again this year. There's a need in town, and we need, as a community, we need to kind of step up and try our best to fill that need. So we're coming tonight to talk to you about the pay rates at Extended Day for a couple of reasons. The current rates that we use were established in July of 2012, 10 years ago. They have not been increased at all. There has been some COLA increases, but not on the base schedule. So whenever someone comes in new to the district that we would like to hire, we're giving them rates of 2012. The new rates will make us be more comparable with other programs, and not just other programs, because we're in competition with other businesses, as McDonald's, Target, things like that, the part-time types of jobs. So we need to become a little bit more competitive on that end as well, not just other after-school programs. We'd also like to bring these rates up a little bit to help promote retention of the staff that we currently have. We have some really outstanding staff at Extended Day, and we'd like to keep them coming back. So we think this is a great way, and this would entice new staff to come to become part of the Reading Extended Day program. And ultimately, it will enable us to increase capacity at Extended Day. And that's our ultimate goal, is to offer that 101 families in Reading that need support and care in the afternoons and in the mornings an option. Right here is our current pay scale. Again, it was established in 2019. If you look, there are a number of different positions. There's a site coordinator position, there's a PM head teacher, there's a PM teacher, there's an AM and PM assistant teacher, and there's an AM head teacher. Each one, when it was established in 2012, had a lot of different duties and responsibilities. From when I came in 2019 until now, I observed all the staff and all the duties, and kind of have made a decision that we don't need all that. We need to streamline it. We need to become basic, and we need to be just the site coordinator to maintain the staffing, the relationships with the parents, the relationships with the school, that type of duty, as well as extended day teachers. The teachers in the program, they're all doing the same job. And the titles just watered it down. So we decided to eliminate the titles. You're an extended day teacher, here are the duties, here are the responsibilities that you're currently doing. You're engaging with the children. You're organizing and implementing games and activities with the children daily. And you're listening to the site coordinator and Mackenzie and myself as well, and we're establishing a strong program. One incentive that we did add for the pay rate is a CPR and/or first aid. So if the staff has CPR and first aid, it's an additional 96 cents an hour on top of their salary. If they have CPR or first aid, it's 44 cents. The extended day staff, again, we don't give a lot for this staff. It's a type of position that people kind of look down on, to be honest. And in my opinion, it's I think, an important position to have. And I think we need to start changing how we look at that position. And this is kind of a little benefit, a little incentive to tell them that, we appreciate everything that you do, and it's just a little thank you. Our current rates compared to other communities. So we've reached out to a number of communities that surround us, as well as part of the New England Directors of Extended Day staffing type of committee. And so I have other information from Westwood, from Hingham, from Hoppingdale, but I don't believe that they're someone that we kind of compete with for staffing. So the communities around us, the Malden, Stoneham, Reading, Tewksbury, Wakefield, Winchester, we're kind of right in the middle with our salary ranges, the new salary ranges. So I think it puts us in a very competitive spot with those communities for staffing, for both the after school as well as like a site coordinator type of position. If you look at that 2012 scale, the pay rates that we used, and we added a cost of living increase for the last 10 years, which was done by the teacher contract, it shows the percentages of what was done. So the total percentage for the 10-year increase was about a 23% increase that was not put into the extended day schedule, salary schedule. So our new salary schedule shows the site coordinator increase of a 21.63% increase, and the teacher rate, the new teacher rate, is at a 20.99% increase. That is the goal of what we're looking at. That teacher percentage rate is based on 3 positions streamlined into one. And if you look at the percentages below, the PM teacher is the highest jump at a 44% increase. The PM teacher was our lowest paid salary. That's why it's the biggest jump. And they were doing the same things as the AM teacher and some of the other staff there. So we need to kind of streamline that and make it fair and equitable for the staff doing these jobs. That is it. That is so I'd like to thank you for that. And this is something that we've been working on. Well, I've been working on since I came in 2019. I had to stop in March when the pandemic hit, and then the department fell through some rough times. But we're back. We're very strong. And as you see, with 101 families on a wait list, the need is there. And I think increasing salaries for the staff is a way to help solve that. So I'd like to, any questions?
Chuck, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. So I saw the comparison to other communities. what about, there's a lot of private enterprises too that do this as well, correct? Or
There is, yeah.
How
So
will we compete against them? with
Absolutely.
those
No,
rates?
that's something that we looked at, and we reached out to some programs in town that offer, private programs in town that offer childcare, and we were unable to get what their salaries were, or what they pay their staff. So it's in their, there are other private organizations as well, and it's difficult to find. They kind of keep it hush-hush unless you apply for a job.
So the, can I continue?
Please, yeah.
So the labor shortage is mainly because of compensation or this?
So- If I had that answer, I would be a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
That is a difficult answer. I don't know why there's a labor shortage. It could be that in the past, we've used teachers as well as paras to help supplement our staffing. They would get additional hours and additional pay. Honestly, since the pandemic, I think there's been a lot of stress added onto those positions, and it becomes a longer day for the staff, so they're more hesitant to take on the additional hours. So they're choosing to stay with just their positions themselves. It's difficult to find staff that would work 2 hours in the morning, a break, come back and work 3 in the afternoon. So it's a tough predicament. It's ideal for, I think, college students. We also hire high school staff, and we have quite a number of high school, we had quite a number last year of high school students that helped out, and we have a number of them that have been applying this year. So if I knew if I could get them in, it would be great.
One other, and I don't know whether this goes to Susan or in terms of the revolving fund, sustain these types of increases?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So we looked at that. We looked at a 3-year period through FY '26 at full enrollment, at full employment with the new wages. And each year for the next 3 years through FY '26, we end with a fund balance right within the sweet spot, just below 10% of the operating expenses for the program. In addition to that, we do have carryover funds that that will be carrying over, that we're working on now to come up with a plan for spending those. But in terms of sustainability, this works.
I mean, and just final comment, I think to your point, I mean, the subscription rate you have says this is successful and this is important, and if we look at every other rate around here and a lot more frequently than 10 years. So, I would support what you've done, your homework, and what you're asking for here. So I don't know what we're doing, whether we're voting or.
Nope, just informational. Carla, go ahead.
Susan, could I ask you a follow-up? When you talk about the full program, are you talking about the current program, not with the addition of the waiting list? So with the new price, right, with the new cost adjustment, salary adjustment?
Yes, and the increase in student enrollment.
Okay.
Because with the addition of the 14, if we fill the 14 openings and paid everyone at the higher wage, we'll be able to take in the additional waiting list students. So full employment, full enrollment, and we still generate a slight profit, right where we want to be.
Thank you.
Erin, go ahead.
So I guess similar to Chuck, so upfront, I'll say, support this 100%. It's embarrassing, frankly, that it's gone on that long at that rate. But I'm a little confused, like, this is already happening for this current year? You're proposing it for next year's budget? I'm a little confused about the context.
Probably.
Yes, so Chris is here this evening to share with you, these are our intention, these are our plans to start right at this year. And with these new wage increases, we'd like to retroactive to the beginning of the school year, so that we can, retain our staff, begin to recruit and fill those 14 open positions. We don't want to wait.
But we're not taking a vote.
That's what I asked.
We're just giving our blessing.
It's not really a policy
or-
question, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Our intention tonight was, we knew that this did not need, school committee approval, but our
Okay.
intention was just to be transparent with the community about just what they could expect in terms of wage increase for our extended day staff, and also what we thought the impact that would have on closing the gap. And I know that the community has a lot of, we have over 400 students in extended day, a lot of families involved. We thought just to be transparent with the committee and with the community about our plan.
And then can I ask one question of Chris? So I already bugged you about First Lego League, but lots of parents are wondering about after-school enrichment, which I know was taken over by Extended Day and then COVID. Is the hope to bring those programs back?
Correct. My goal is to bring those back. Where the department went through a tough time, we went down to one person in the office doing the work of 4, so now we have 2 doing the work of 4, and the staffing shortage of extended day kind of rocked the ship, so we're studying that, and once we have that stable, we turn our focus to enrichment. And the goal is to bring that back at the latest by January, and to start offering some type of after-school enrichments, some STEMs. A lot of the old programs will be coming back.
Awesome, that's exciting. Appreciate all your work toward that.
Thank you.
Is there anything? All right, so I just have a couple of questions. Just to confirm, the Reading rates on this page are the new rates?
Correct.
That we're implementing, okay.
Correct.
So Ms. Baton's comment about the revolving fund,
Yeah.
projecting out 3 years suggests that we can absorb, this and the sort of balance of rates we pay and rates we charge families is well in balance. On Aaron's question about enrichment, if we think about whether there's staffing implications for things like that, I'm curious, what's the history of the rates that we charge to families? And is there, without opening a can of worms, I'm going to open a can of worms. Is there, at what point are we having a discussion about looking at that to be able to sort of fully support the program at the central office level as well?
Oh, so great question. That's on a different slide that we didn't present. But we did some research on that, and we broke down our hourly rates, and we are actually one of the lowest of an hourly rate. We come out to about $5.50 an hour for care, and I believe Wilmington is the only town around us that's cheaper. I think they're at $4.40, $4.60. But we are one of the cheapest compared as cost. The goal is not to increase rates at all, and with our predictions of going out 3 years, I don't see us increasing rates for 3 years. However, with economic times and things like that, I can't guarantee that. But my goal is to keep the prices the same right now. For the enrichment program, in the past, it was always, the enrichment programs were open to the general community. Extended day students could become part of those programs at a discounted rate since they're already there. I believe in 2019, something was done to change the wait list, and enrichment was happening just for the extended day students. And that actually, I think, played a huge role into what happened with the budget in 2019-20. So the goal is to bring back those enrichments for the whole general public at a tuition rate. And that, again, would be, extended day students would be allowed to go into that as well at a discounted rate.
Great, thank you. And then just one final comment, just for folks watching at home, if it's not clear from the discussion, extended day is paid for out of a revolving fund, so it's self-sustaining essentially, and this increase doesn't impact the budget that we have for, for the rest of the district budget. And it suggests that we probably were actually on track to run at a healthy surplus, in fact, if we weren't making these pay adjustments. So I'm supportive as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd thank Chris and Mackenzie for their work too. And one thing is, you probably know it's not uncommon to see them out there interacting with the kids after school, late hours. I know a lot of times I've left and seen them out playing, interacting, stepping in, filling voids as with staff shortages too. And I think, as we know, that they were one of the groups that was most impacted by staffing shortages, particularly with absences with COVID and everything. And I think they both just led by example and stepped in where it's needed too. So just like to thank both of them for their leadership for the program. And it's exciting to see the way that the program is back on the rise. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Okay, so now we'll move to a couple of items on Killam here. Carla, why don't we take a motion on the feasibility study, and then we'll start there on the warrant article.
I move to approve the Killam warrant article introduction for inclusion in the warrant report.
Is there a second? Seconded by Sarah. Okay. So any discussion from the committee on the warrant article itself? I'll just acknowledge, we did get some feedback, which was similar to feedback that was shared during our hearing last time around, being more explicit about the possibility of including RISE and things like that. I think, given the direction we've received around the language being as prescriptive as it is from the MSBA, I think it's probably wise for us to leave it as is in terms of this language itself. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we will take a vote. All in favor? And all opposed? And that carries 5-0. Okay, and then now for the second motion, Carla.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 district strategic.
Well, sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
skipped
sorry.
one. The one about the blurb.
Oh, sorry. I move to approve,
We did this one. We need to do this one.
no.
Did we do them
I
out of
did-
order?
So sorry.
So we can take a motion to reopen. We did it out of order. I didn't even notice. I'm sorry. Let's, okay, so we need a motion to reopen that item, and then we'll take, so moved by Sarah. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. So now on the table, again, is the introduction. The introduction, we do have a little bit more, sorry about that, I totally missed that. With the introduction, we do have a little bit more leeway, and I think all the members of the committee probably saw the piece of feedback that we got this evening. I did take some of what was suggested and streamline it a little bit. I'll put it up on the screen here.
Yes.
So the recommendation from Ms. Downing from the FinCom was to acknowledge in the introduction, at a minimum, that while the warrant article is focused on Killam, and while, sort of the MSBA discussion is focused on the Killam site, that the feasibility study could also allow us to alleviate challenges, more broadly across the district, both from a space and a programmatic perspective. So the language you see highlighted here is some that I borrowed from Ms. Downing and then slightly adapted and maybe streamlined a little bit. And I would propose that we include this in the version that we submit to for the warrant report. So I'll give folks a minute to digest, and then we can take any feedback or comments. Aaron.
I'm not sure how I feel about the last sentence, while the primary impetus. I see the primary impetus as resolving both of these issues. Like I think the space needs is a major reason why we're doing this, not just that the building has deficiencies. Like, we can't just build a new Killam. We have to address the fact that we have modular classrooms, that we have a preschool spread out all over town. Like, we can't do a project that doesn't acknowledge those. So, yeah, so I would word that differently, because I don't think this is like secondary. I think it's this and this that we are trying to address with this project, or hoping to address. I don't know how others feel, but.
So just one opinion. I think your point is correct. I asked myself the question, though, would we be in the MSBA process if we only had the Killam deficiencies to talk about? You know, all the things we've all talked about. I think the answer is yes. Would we be in the MSBA process if we were just trying to create, you know, alleviate space constraints at other schools? I'm not so sure that we would. So I hear you. I mean, I think we should endeavor to think about this project as, you know, as sort of globally as possible. You know, we don't know at the end of the day what the MSBA is going to be willing to sort of, you know, fund and participate in. And I think it's important that when we go to town meeting, we're clear that the reason we're here is because the reason we're here at this point, having been accepted in the eligibility period and so forth, is because of the significant deficiencies around Killam. But we've also already acknowledged that there are other opportunities that a new building creates for us, and we expect those to be part of the discussion as well. Chuck.
So this blurb is basically what's going to go into the warrant that is this, I'll call it the school committee report on the, so we can certainly talk about those. I mean, it doesn't all have to be specifically, this is just our report, right?
It's not, it's actually the introduction, so in the warrant report, we'll have a report
But it's not
as well.
it's not what they're voting on.
No,
Yeah.
what they're voting on is the actual warrant text in the motion. Yep. Go ahead.
I'm really struggling with this. This feels like a complete shift in narrative. Like, when we got the schematic designs from GNAP, the whole point was they landed on Killam as the best place to build a larger school. They didn't land on it because it was a school that needed renovating or redoing. They landed on it because it was the best place to accommodate a larger building because we have a space needs issue. So I don't want that to be secondary in the narrative. I think we have two things. We have a building that has never been renovated and has substantial problems, but we have space needs. We have modulars that were never intended to last forever. You all know the issues. I'm not going to reiterate them, but so I feel like this is setting a narrative for town meeting, and I disagree with this narrative, I guess. I think we've got two issues we're trying to resolve with one building. I don't see one as secondary to the other. I think they're both vital needs for the district.
What do others think? Sarah.
I mean, I completely, echo that thought, that I think, the initial intent of this, of the GNAP study, whatever you want to call it, was to address our overall needs, balancing, I think here the challenge is balancing the MSBA process specifically while also meeting those needs. I'm wondering if we can do that by tweaking this paragraph a little bit and maybe moving it down a section. So I'm trying to edit on the fly here, but I think, so that after, in between footprint and, I think if you move this section down, Sean, so leaving, so as it is right now, so the paragraph above that ends with creatively using the building's footprint, the next section, if you ignore the highlighted part, says it could be possible to address some of these deficiencies, blah, 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 blah. More likely outcome. I wonder if we insert some of those sentences about the other piece of this puzzle, because the feasibility study also presents, overall solutions for X, Y, and Z, and then it goes into the MSBA process. So I don't know, that might kind of, so here's the problem with Killam. Here's what we need to address. Here's what else it could address. and here we've been invited into this process. To me, logically, that kind of puts out the main points.
Erin, I wonder, so I think the objective here should be to be as sort of direct with town meeting about the range of possible outcomes as we can, right? I think within the range of possible outcomes is a building that doesn't have a dramatic amount more space than what we have today. Because when we find out how much things cost, when we figure out sort of, what the MSBA is willing to reimburse us for, when we find out more about what MSBA reimbursement rates look like, I don't know that it's a given that we're going to end up with a building that is substantially larger than the current Killam footprint, being honest. I mean, I'd love for that to be the case. I think we're all driving for that. But there's a place you get to where none of us could convince ourselves that we would get a debt override approved for a certain dollar figure, and I want to acknowledge that that's maybe within the range of possibilities. So maybe a compromise, because I hear your point. Like I think our intent is to drive towards a building that does address some of these other needs as well. What if we change the framing from the feasibility study could also present solutions to the feasibility study would likely or will likely present solutions? And then we could do something, we could drop that last line or reword it in some way. Because I think your point's valid. Like I don't want to lead with this is just about the the current footprint or the current student population of Killam, because you're right. I mean that's not the only thing that we're focused on here. So I don't know how that feels, but I also don't want to go into town meeting pretending it's a given that we're going to have 200 more seats at the end of this, right?
I disagree. I don't want to do a building unless we're addressing other needs. I mean, I get it. Killam needs it, but I don't want to see those modulars in 10 years still servicing as classrooms. I mean, the whole point of this is to address the space needs. And I think
Programmatic needs.
Right.
And I think that's the thing we need to make sure gets across in this, is that this is a study to see what's feasible to address the overall.
Right, so wouldn't the correct language be the feasibility study would also present? Because the reality is we're going to explore these things. Whether we come to the conclusion that they're the best design or not remains to be seen. But we are going to explore them in the feasibility study, correct?
We're going to explore them, but this committee is not the one that's going to ultimately present solutions, right? So I'm hesitant for us to commit to, for us as five, or 5 plus Tom, to commit to this is going to happen, because I want to accurately represent the range of possible outcomes as we go through the process. And with this now becoming a school building committee owned process, basically after tonight, I think you're right. I think it's very, very likely. I don't know that we can guarantee it. And I don't know how to think about it in terms of, does town meeting want to hear that this building is going to solve for a bunch more things, or does town meeting want to hear that we're being, that the intent is to focus on the sort of most dramatic need, around the safety and accessibility and so forth of the current building? I don't know. Carla, what do you think?
So Erin, I think that you're right in terms of it's not only there to upgrade Killam and remedy Killam's issues. It's helping us district-wide as well. Is the part that's bothering you the words primary impetus? Is that, if we tweak that last line, would that make you feel better about it?
Yeah, it's more you're kind of blowing my mind, Sean. I'm going to be blunt. It's more the idea that we would not attempt to address these things in this project. That's news to me, that we wouldn't also be attempting to explore options for more space in this feasibility study,
I think
and as designs are explored. So to me, like I said, it's this and this, not this and maybe this. So it's the idea that it's secondary, that it might not happen, that's the wording I'm kind of struggling with. But maybe I'm the only one who feels that way. I don't know. I'm really taken aback by this.
It's a fair point, right? Because I think we all feel very strongly that that's the best path and that's the most likely path, right? I acknowledge that. I think that's right. But similar to the paragraph before, where we can't just say this is definitely a rebuild, even though, if we're all being honest, we all think it's a rebuild.
Yeah.
We can't say that because the process requires us to evaluate renovation, repair, et cetera. In the same vein, the intent here, and maybe it's not the right wording, but the intent here, again, was just to sort of capture sort of the range of outcomes. Now, I hear you. The primary impetus for the project, I don't feel that strongly about keeping that. And I'm fine, making the language in that first sentence more declarative. I do think it's useful for us, for town meeting purposes, to include some of these other things that we think will be addressed, right? And leave, at least the sliver of the possibility that at the end of it's possible. I don't think it's likely. It's certainly not probable. It's possible that at some point the town's being asked to vote on something that doesn't address all of these things as fully as we'd like it to, right? I think that's within the range of possibility.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to address all of them. I would hope it would address some.
But this is just for the feet, so we won't know that for a while. I mean, this is just for the feasibility study, so, I think we need to be as transparent as possible, or fully transparent as to what we want to, what kind of direction we want to see from the feasibility study, and if that is more than Killam, then we need to point that out, right?
Yep. Like, for example, if they're going to do a traffic study, isn't part of the consideration, can the traffic accommodate 600 kids instead of 450 kids? I mean, and why are you considering that unless you're considering making the school larger? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
So there's a great point. So what if the traffic study says no? What if the traffic study says Killam, from a site perspective, from a traffic flow perspective, is bursting at the seams? Are we not going to rebuild Killam?
I don't know. I mean, we have to cross that bridge when we come to it, but I would expect the traffic study to study the possibility for a larger population at that building, whether they have staggered start times, I don't know.
I think we're all aligned on the expectation that it will happen. Yep, Chuck.
Sorry, can I ask another question? Do we get out of line with MSBA if we start adding a bunch of other things other than Killam into what we're asking for the money for?
No, and I think that's what Aaron's reacting to. We did include all of this discussion about, broader programmatic challenges and so forth. We did include all of that in what, most of what we've submitted to the MSBA so far. So, does that guarantee that the MSBA is willing to fund everything that benefits another school and isn't about, rehabbing Killam or rebuilding Killam? Not necessarily, right?
I'm sorry, but when we talked about the programmatic challenges and stuff with MSBA, we were talking about relative to Killam, not necessarily other buildings in the district, correct? Carla?
Incorrect. I would say that GNAP was given the mandate to look at our enrollment, look at our programmatic needs district-wide. They came back, they studied every site, they studied
Oh, I know all
Right, they
that. I'm
studied all that. So they were solving multiple problems, right? And that got us into the feasibility, that got us into the MSBA process. Now, clean the slate, right? Clean the slate and move forward with a design that we're going to obviously talk about what our needs are, but the feasibility study and determining that site and what it looks like and what it can handle in terms of traffic and geotech and all that kind of stuff. That's going to determine, I think, the wording that Sean and Marianne were proposing was just to open the door to say, these are the things that may happen, but we don't know. You know, I think part of this was generated from the whole conversation of RISE, right? And also for us to later on be clear to say, okay, this is our proposal moving forward after the feasibility study with MSBA. What is included in MSBA's reimbursement and what's not? And then the town needs to decide what the importance is, right? Are we going to fund the entire project? You know, they need to understand what are the nice-to-haves and what are the need-to-haves. That's how I looked at this process. So we're almost cleaning the slate, but it is solving needs for the entire district and the entire town, not just Killam, but it has to address the
But we've
existing
been
Killam.
calling it Killam from the beginning.
Because the site is the most, the site is the most advantageous, I guess, or to make
Sarah.
a change.
So to piggyback on that and then go back to this piece, I think, if I recall correctly, I don't think I have my notes from that summertime meeting we had, the initial meeting we had with MSBA, but I do recall part of that initial conversation being around systemic needs as well, so that this site, in addition to the building being in dire need, would also alleviate other greater systemic issues that we have around other building constraints and et cetera. So I think we were both on that one. If I recall, that was part of that, and it was part of our application as well. And I think by striking the last sentence there and tweaking the wording to be more declarative, like you have right there, Sean, I think that does get to what we're saying, that part of this study will be to consider the overall systemic needs we have in the district and what's actually feasible at the Killam site to address Killam plus other items.
Yeah, just to tie it together, sorry, just one second, Dr. Milczewski, just to tie it together, I mean, I think the first draft of this was deficient in not acknowledging that some of these other things are part of the discussion, right? So you add that paragraph, but then you also have to caveat it to say, these are part of the assessment, part of the feasibility study. We don't know how much of this we're going to be able to achieve, right? So I think your reaction's a fair one. It made it seem very back burner. I did think it was important to caveat that we are going to consider, that it will consider solutions for some of these challenges and some of these broader, programmatic needs in the district, but not commit to it. The thing I was worried about in drafting this was, we've all seen it happen. You say something, we're looking at something, or we're thinking about something, or we're considering something, and all of a sudden, people hear that thing is happening, and so we wanted to sort of caveat appropriately for those reasons. Dr. Milczewski.
I think I was going the same direction that Sarah and you just both just went, that I think that the first draft did a really nice job outlining some of the programmatic deficiencies and also some of the facilities deficiencies. And I also like this new shift of just being more explicit. It's inevitable that these pieces come up in the conversation. I can't imagine a conversation looking at, what are we doing next in the feasibility study and not talking about, the space needs of the other schools, not talking about, the RISE. I mean, these are going to be a part of the conversation. And I don't think we need to prioritize one need over the other. I think this document did a good job outlining the need. I think this takes it to the next level. So I appreciate Sarah and Sean's comments here. I think we're in a much better spot with this draft here. I think it's very transparent with what's ahead.
I agree.
Any other comments? So Carla, can we maybe, Dr. Quorum.
Jeffrey Quorum, Ridge Road. I'm fine with adding it. If this is the first time you mention RISE in the draft, for the purposes of town meeting, you might want to say the RISE preschool program. Just.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Okay, so Carla, maybe we can offer a motion to accept it as amended or approve it as amended?
I move to approve the Killam warrant article introduction as amended for inclusion in the warrant report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sarah, any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And that carries 5-0. Okay, so Carla, maybe we can do the actual warrant article motion.
I move to approve the warrant article and accompanying motion for formal submission to the Select Board for inclusion in the subsequent town meeting warrant.
Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion on this one? This has not changed since we looked at it first on August 29th or so. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? And that carries 5-0 as well. Okay. What's next on the agenda? I don't have it in front of me.
Exercise.
Sorry, what is it?
The district.
The strategic plan,
yeah.
okay. Dr. Milichewski, I think I'll let you take over from here and return to the dais.
What we just discussed last Friday morning.
We just close the document and reopen it. Can we make sure that that's saved, that draft we just worked on?
Open up the packet. Just go.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. Thank you. And then you can close out of it.
Open up the packet.
It's page
Yeah.
There it is.
25.
The packet.
So for those watching at home, this is in the packet, if you're struggling to track it on the screen. Page 25 in the packet. 27 in the packet.
I was going to say, no, it says 25 in the PDF, sorry.
Whispers.
It says 25 on the PDF.
All right, feels weird to be back up on the podium with a new system. I don't know if I know. All right, so tonight our team wanted the chance to present an updated version of our district strategic plan. So start to give a little bit of context on the process that we went through and also sort of the document in front of you. First, in terms of process, as you likely know, Dr. Doherty created the most recent version of the district strategic plan back in the spring of 2020, and it was a multi-year plan that spanned up until this school year, 2022-2023. So our team felt that, Dr. Doherty had made the commitment to the community to continue on that plan for 3 years. We felt that it was important to follow through with that commitment that has been made to the community with the plan, while also being reflective of some of the things that we think are our current context, which are some of the changing landscape of education in the pandemic context, and also some of the things that have come to us this past year, which is this summer, the DESE district review, most recently our special education program reviews, and then also the entry plans that both Dr. Hardy and I created too. So we wanted to make sure that we were following through the district strategic plan, but also modifying and adapting that to be responsive to our current context. So what we did in the spring was we met with our principals and also our district coordinators and directors to look at the district strategic plan and put that side by side with just where we were, looking at a draft of the DESE district review, our entry plan, and figure out what here do we need to tweak, modify to be better reflect the work that's ahead for our district. After we did that, a smaller group of us took that feedback to try to streamline and consolidate the district strategic plan for the year ahead. That team was everyone you see up here. So Susan, Jen, Sarah, and also Michelle Roach. Representing the high school, Kevin Tracy. Representing the middle school, Sarah Marchant. And representing the elementary schools, Caitlin Shelburne. And then also Heather Leonard, our K-8 STEM coordinator as well. We're a team that was tasked with taking the feedback from our larger group of principals and directors and then tweaking or taking that feedback and then modifying our district strategic plan. So we then, over the summer, then worked through that, created a draft, which you see up here on the screen, and then are now using that to drive some of our work ahead. So I want to, our team also felt like there's a couple of documents here. First, there's a one-page district strategic plan. This is what should drive all of the district improvement efforts across our district. So this is these should be the large, broad objectives that are drive what we're doing in the district and at each individual school. Following that, you will see a district improvement plan. These are the specific ways that our district, at the district level, plans to live out the district strategic plan. In the same way that we are expecting each school community to draft a school improvement plan, we also are creating a district improvement plan that, again, reflects how we're living out the strategic plan. At the next school committee meeting, our plan is to update and share more about the district improvement plan. We think what we put in here around our improvement plan are like a high-level version of what we're going to do, but we also recognize we haven't put on there yet. What are the ways that we can measure our success? What are the things that the community can actually expect to see over the next year? So our team right now is in the process of starting to map that out together. So that's something we expect and plan to talk about the next meeting when I talk about my goals, but also then to talk about sort of what are some of the ways that we can measure the work that's here on the district improvement plan. So tonight I want to give a high-level overview of our district strategic plan and then open up for questions. And I have our team with here who have been working really closely with us on this plan. So when I say that we aligned this to what, or built this off of what Dr. Doherty and the team had created, I mean that by a couple of ways. First, we did not go back and adjust anything on terms of mission, vision, or portrait of a graduate. That work had already been sort of created. We also added in our district equity statement. And then the previous strategic plan also had 3 pillars that drove the work. One, supportive and safe learning environments. So you see that that's something we kept as our first strategic objective. 2, coherent instructional systems, which we kept as our second sort of bucket of work. The third bucket of work Dr. Doherty had noted was from 2020 to 2021, which is around redesigning school in sort of a pandemic context. We thought that that didn't necessarily fit where we were right now, so that shifted for us around school ops. So to talk through each of these a little bit and what they mean for us. So tonight you should leave this presentation with just an idea of just where the direction the district is heading in terms of just some focus areas and where we're trying to center our work for the year. So first, safe and supportive learning environments. So you'll see written here we write, we believe healthy and successful learning environments are a prerequisite to achieving equity in schools. Furthermore, a healthy and successful learning environment or learning communities exist when all members of the community, no matter where they live, what they look like, what they believe, what language they speak, who they love, or how they learn, feel seen, valued, affirmed, and connected. We know that the biggest predictor for students in their success in schools is how connected they feel with their school community. Right? So right now, in a context, where in schools it's always been important to monitor who feels connected, engaged, affirmed, valued in schools. Right now, in a pandemic context, we realize that students nationally and even here in Reading are having a harder time than ever in feeling that sense of connectedness. So we think it's imperative that as a district, we are really focused on monitoring how our students are feeling each day when they come to school and they feel like this is a place where they feel connected. So what are we doing about that? So I think the first bullet here you see is our focus is to try to build a shared understanding of sense of belonging. We need to make sure that across all of our schools, when all of our principals, all of our teachers are talking about sense of belonging, we're all talking about the same exact sorts of things. And the second part of that is we need to start to identify common indicators to measure progress. So we need to find tangible ways that we are able to measure and quantify how connected students are feeling at school, how valued students feel at school. Because if we don't have some way to measure how students are feeling, we are not going to be able to make adjustments to sort of what we're doing programmatically. 2, review systems and implement practices, systems, staffing models to foster inclusive environments. So if we are going to focus on creating sort of sense of belonging in schools, we also need to look at the staffing models that we have, whether or not that supports us in that work. Looking at just our systems and our practices to make sure that we are doing everything that we can sort of structurally to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. And then last, which is a lot more, I think, of some of the technical work, is creating, refining, and aligning safety-centered protocols and processes. We think that we had some work, sort of some of the work in Handbook, but also some more work around attendance policies and protocols, around safety, crisis policies, some others, that we think we have some major work to do that we think will help us to create safer and more supportive learning environments for our students. This year, you should continue to hear from us, sense of belonging, sense of belonging. Here's how we're measuring this. Here's what our schools are doing for sense of belonging. Here's some things that are working for us in sense of belonging. If you turn the page, which I'm not going to speak to tonight, you'll see some of the specific things that our district is doing to try to live that out this year. And again, in our next meeting, we'll share some, add some teeth to that to say, here's some ways that you're going to be able to measure and sort of hold us accountable for our work in this year. Also, I just want to be really clear that we see a strong tie in this work between sense of belonging and equity, right? If you look nationally at students who generally, groups of students who are not feeling as affirmed, as seen, as valued and connected in our school, there's trends when we look at certain groups of students. And we see similar, trends here in Reading, right? We also have to look beyond some of those, groups that we may just, sort of on hunch think may not feel connected. We know last year we had speeches at graduation from valedictorian, salutatorian, class president who spoke a little bit about just ways that they had felt that, disconnected at times throughout their high school experience. So I think this requires us to be in tune with groups of students who we may know may not feel connected, or historically or sort of nationwide may not feel as connected, but also having a lens of really all students and trying to make sure that everyone feels safe and supported in our school communities. Second focused area is again, Dr. Doherty categorized this as coherent instructional systems. You're going to hear us a lot talk about rigor. This is a point we want to make extremely clear, is this first sentence under strategic objective 2. We believe that equity in schools is best achieved through high quality instruction. I'm going to say that one more time because we believe that really strongly, is that we believe that equity in schools is best achieved through high quality instruction. We cannot talk about equity in schools unless we are talking about instruction. And the best way that we can start to achieve equity in our schools is by raising the bar for teaching and learning and by giving all of our students access to really high quality instruction. Often in schools, we've noticed, especially in a pandemic context, right, equity is kind of sometimes work in schools that's done on the side, but not really at the core of what happens around teaching and learning, right? We are not going to have equitable outcomes in our schools unless we focus on improving teaching and learning. So we make that connection here explicitly around equity. We say high quality instruction is our best lever for improving outcomes for students, and in particular, groups of students who have not been met with success in our district. We know when we looked at all sorts of different data, whether you look at our MCAS data from last year, whether you look at who's taking our AP classes, who's having success on SATs, we know that that can be predictive of a lot of times of demographic data. Right, so a focus of us for improving equity, and we think at the core of that is improving teaching and learning. I've shared this with the committee a couple of times. I think the big moment for me that this has been kind of connected in these two pieces has been when I was doing my principal residency, sort of stepping in from being a teacher. I was at the Jeremiah Burke High School in Dorchester, which was, I was a principal resident, so shadowing the high school principal, the headmaster, Linda McIntyre. And Jeremiah Burke, during that time, became the first high school ever to exit level 4 turnaround status. And she did that through a lot of different strategies, but I would say first and foremost was a core focus on teaching and learning. I remember my first day, and she said, Tom, if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to be here for equity, if you really want to move the needle for our students, you need to focus on teaching and learning. We cannot have that disconnect that so often exists in schools. When we talk about equity, we have to have teaching and learning. And when we talk about teaching and learning, we have to talk about equity. So what is it that we're doing about that this year? First is we're spending a lot of time trying to calibrate with our leaders and then through our leaders, through our teachers around what rigorous instructional practice looks like. You heard Sarah already speak a little bit about some of the work that the high school is doing in this area. We have all of our principals engaging in our instructional leadership team training with Salem State. So there's a lot of things that we're already starting to do in this work. When we define rigor, there's a lot of different components, which we'll probably come back to many different times. Two things that are on our radar this year, which again, I'm getting a little bit into next week or next meeting, is one, ensuring that we are consistently teaching and to the rigor of each standard, right? So we should be in all of our classrooms teaching to the actual rigor of every grade level standard. And two, right, what are the tasks that we're putting in front of our students? Are the tasks closely aligned to grade level standards? Are the tasks promoting critical thinking skills? What are we asking our students to do during the core block of teaching and learning? So that work of calibration is one huge part of our work this year. Two, ensuring high-quality curriculum materials. This should come as no surprise to the committee. The committee has been, I know, champions of our work over the past couple of years around illustrative math. I know the committee took a very active role and was a champion and a partner in helping us to push for ARC Core at the elementary level. We know that we have more work to do, even especially at the secondary level, around ensuring high-quality curriculum materials. That's a focus for us. It's really hard to improve outcomes if you don't have the best materials in front of our students. And then third, create a comprehensive assessment system district-wide. We know that with a lot of these new curriculum materials that we have, there are some assessments that are embedded that we just need to use effectively. We also know now at the middle school we have iReady, and we're thinking about other ways that we are going to be at the high school level constantly being able to monitor how our students are doing. A focus for us in terms of improving rigor and improving our instructional systems is ensuring that we have ways to measure how our students are doing throughout the year. Then the third strategic objective, school operations. This is work that I think that is always important for a district. I think this is one where if you flip to the district improvement plan, you can get an idea of what we're talking about with some of these broad buckets here. The first one, evaluate and improve identified school and district level operational departments and systems. We cannot focus on every single operational system as sort of what we're trying to as our core strategy for or our core focus for the year. You'll see here in the district improvement plan, there's a few that are of particular interest to us. One I'm going to call out tonight is food service. You know, we've spoken about transitioning to a full-time director, a new director. We're having an evaluation of our food service program, an assessment of our program coming this fall. We believe that if we are able to provide high quality food options for our kids, that this is also something that can not only be a game changer for kids and just in health and well-being, but also in terms of student outcomes. So the second bullet of our focus areas, again, leverage and optimize all resources, including staffing, time on learning, and funding. As we get into the budget season, you should hear a lot from us on looking at staffing ratios, looking at schedule, looking at time on learning, looking at groupings. As one particular example, our high school continues to go through sort of their schedule remodel with the hopes of having a new schedule for next year. Our middle school principals just started a training with the district management group around looking at student scheduling, which is also requiring them to look at groupings, is to look at staffing ratios. How do we make sure we maximize sort of the models that we have? And at elementary, we've talked about it a couple of times of looking at just that half day and how are we maximizing the time on learning for students. So what we wanted to do was to tonight just paint a picture of where we're going. We're hopeful that the committee and the community understands that we're going to be focusing on sense of belonging. We're going to be focusing on academic rigor, and then also focusing on some particular areas within school operations. At the next school committee meeting, again, we'll give that some more teeth by talking specifics. You'll hear from Sarah when we talk about coherent instructional systems, exactly what that's looking like. You'll hear from Jen when we're hearing about supportive safe learning environments, and then Susan around operations, and again with some measurables that the committee and the community can hold us accountable for over the next year. So I'll pause there if anyone just has any questions or feedback for either for myself or for anyone else on the team.
Seeing smirks, I'm not sure why. I'll just make one comment. I'm seeing a lot of, this is essentially a double click in some ways on the 3-year plan. And so, but I think it threads the needle nicely of building on sort of the themes. And there's a really strong through line here to a lot of the things that we've been hearing about and talking about through your entry plan findings, not just yours, but the whole, the whole team, the folks that have had entry plans of late. So it builds really nicely on what was already in place and very well represents some of the priorities that we've been talking about over the last few months. So it's not clear to me that we're required to vote on this, but given that it's in some sense, an amendment to the district strategic plan. We thought it was probably best to take a vote. Is there any other discussion before we do so? Okay, Carla, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 District Strategic Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? 5-0. Okay, and then our last order of business tonight is the district handbook review. So a little bit of context, and then I think Dr. Milczewski will probably send you back to the podium. Although, actually, we don't need to put it up there. It's too dense anyway,
We'll
right? So, yeah. Maybe we do. So just the context on this, just to connect this to the past discussions that we've had, we will have some votes on specific school handbooks coming in the next, handful of meetings. In the interim, if, should we approve this district handbook tonight, it will supersede the building handbooks in the relevant places, in the places where there's, sort of overlap. And that'll give the school councils an opportunity to figure out what exactly they need to clean up, what they need to strike from their existing handbooks and so forth. So I just wanted to connect that, given that we looked at specific handbooks last time, and now we're looking at a district handbook. So with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. So I think that this, first of all, what you'll see in your packet is a district handbook. And I think that this idea of creating a district handbook that organizes and consolidates what we think are a lot of the practices, policies, and also procedures that should be consistent across all of our schools. That idea started several years ago. I know that there's been committee members and community members who have shared the feedback that there's been some inconsistencies in areas where they feel that there maybe shouldn't be inconsistencies. I'd like to thank Principal Sarah Marchant, who brought it up to us at the beginning of this year, said, from her perspective, when there was a policy that was changed, maybe she would make an adjustment, but it was hard to make sure that then every principal would maybe make an adjustment that would be in alignment with maybe a shift in school committee policy. So I think just this idea has kind of been bubbling around for several years. And then also talking with legal counsel thought that it was important for us to have, there's some policies that should be consistent across all schools. So that for us was the impetus to check this out and move into it this summer. Shout out to Jen Stiles, who took this on in the beginning of the year when there was a ton going on. Worked closely with with all of our principals and some other members she wanted to shout out: Brian Lewis, Erica McNamara, Tom Zaya, Karen Hall, Mary Juliana, Lynna Williams, Katie Fiorello, members of the school committee, all who've kind of helped bring these pieces together. I think what you see in front of you is, first of all, it's not creative writing, right? This is like pretty closely related to what a lot of other districts are doing, what legal counsels should be doing, and I think streamlines a lot of policies across the district. Also, then it enables us to trim up some of the school handbooks, which have become pretty dense, to pull out some of the pieces maybe that, around the sort of discipline procedures and protocols and policies are kind of now district-wide, so they don't need to live in the school-specific handbook, so that should shrink down the school-specific handbooks quite a bit. And then I also think that it enables sort of the school councils to be able to have a better understanding of what's within their scope of control, right, and versus what sort of things now are living under the district and under the purview of the school committee. I just wanted to make bring your attention to one thing in the handbook that was a shift for us. A couple of weeks ago at our last meeting, we made the proposal to move to the term parent/caregiver with the hopes of becoming more inclusive with our language. We then unfortunately have to kind of move back from that language back to parents, guardians, per the guidance of legal counsel, who says there's a certain connotation or meaning for caregivers that when you're putting that in some of these policies and protocols, you might be setting yourself up with sort of situations that you were unintended. So when we share this with principals, say we still welcome the language of being parents/caregivers in communications, but in terms of the handbooks, you're going to see consistency around parents/guardians. Jen, anything that you want to add within this?
Sorry, just a couple of other things. We are also looking at doing one for athletics. And you'll note in the handbook that there's some reference to MIAA plus, meaning that we take all of the MIA guidelines and apply that to all clubs and band and theater so that we have those consistent expectations, and that's what that means. And then I know Dr. Coram had raised the question of having people sign off, and our legal counsel said it's really a matter of receipt, that the students, middle school and above, are saying, we have received this, and then it's our responsibility to make sure that everybody understands what's in it and that the families are talking to the students about it. So we did get the answers to those questions as well.
And we know that this may not be perfect at this point, and we feel like there's going to be a lot of sort of iterations as we come, but I think this is better sort of spot than where we were. We will come back at some point to get approval on the high school handbook. So the high schools essentially just have to slash some of the things that now live under the district. All our school principals are going to work with their school councils to go through the same process. But we think that sort of throughout, in short order, we should have district handbooks that are a little bit better aligned.
Just before we go to discussion, why don't we take a motion and trigger that?
I move to approve the district handbook.
Is there a second? Sarah? Okay. Chuck, go ahead.
So, thank you for this and great work. Who's going to own this going forward? Because, that's what we found, like, use the high school as an example, and it hasn't been kept up to date. Who's going to handle this one?
I don't dare look to my right.
I think it would probably fall under me. We did a ton of work with legal counsel on this, and I think that as regulations change, that it would fall under us to make sure that it's updated. We also want to work with our building leaders over this year to talk about where does the code of conduct belong, and that's something that we need to talk about. I know there were some questions about repetitions in the handbook, but those are recommended for legal counsel based on complaints and case law to make sure that we are covered. So we're going to continue to look at it this year, but I guess it will fall under me if you have any questions or concerns.
I wasn't looking at you when I asked the question. That's important. that's just something that somebody has to pay attention to because it can quickly become outdated.
Check.
And just that I think part of what we're doing is really working with our legal counsel around professional development, that our principals understand all of this, the policies and procedures are in alignment with the professional development and support we're providing the building leaders. So I think we have a really good plan.
I think, Chuck, to that point too, our principals, many of them have expressed it become so decentralized that it became hard for them to stay connected on what needed to be updated and things like that. So I think there's certain challenges by having it sit with one sort of person too, but I think our principals would share that they sort of appreciate that and not having to sort of make these constant updates every year as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about this secondarily is for the policy subcommittee, we're in the process of our TFM, tiered focus monitoring for homeless and for civil rights. And there's some policies that we're going to need to look at updating around military families, homelessness, so that it was actually a great secondary activity for us to go through to make sure that we really get that and then have it published on our website.
Yeah, I think that the optimistic view is that, when there's a change, only having to propagate it once instead of
Yes.
propagate it 8 times and figure out how it, impacts language that might be written 8 different ways is theoretically a benefit now that we've got this in place, so. Any other discussion? I know we all had the opportunity to provide feedback and read this ahead of time and that sort of thing as well. Okay, we will take a vote. All in favor? All opposed? And it carries 5-0. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank everybody for hanging in through what was a bumpier meeting than usual. I think we still finished ahead of schedule somehow. I'm not sure how that happened. I will entertain one final motion. You have to say it.
Motion to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. All in favor? All opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you.